Yo moin! Welcome to another episode of the Lebenspraxis Podcast. And this is how we say hello in the north of Germany. And of course, you want to know what is the most important city in Germany if you are a listener not from Germany, but also from Germany. Maybe you want to know. I give you a few seconds to think about it. Okay, yes, it's true. It's Rostock. It's my hometown. Obviously, this is a very important city. For no reason. But people from Rostock tend to be sort of patriotic about their city. I have no idea why. I think some people started and then other people continued with it. Anyway, today I wanted to first start with talking about what the Lebenspraxis is. And then we dive into another topic. The Lebenspraxis is an idea. And the idea is to live life consciously, meaning with the senses awake and meaning to make choices and to take responsibility. So it's made up of two words, Leben and Praxis. So life and practice. So it's about life, but it's also about practicing. And what does it mean to practice? To practice, for me, it means to go deeply into things, instead of just passing by. What you do exactly in this Lebenspraxis is up to you. So I just want to share the concept, the concept with you, and I want to show my interpretation for me, so how I live it, what I do, but also what other people do. And this I do here through the podcast. This I do also through the YouTube channel where I show other people and where I show how I do things. But what you do exactly, that should be really up to you. So it's an idea about an approach, an attitude towards life. And it's not certain things that you're doing. Someone recently asked me, Josef, what do you mean with showing up is not enough? Because I mentioned this in one podcast episode recently, and in the beginning, in the first episodes, I mentioned this also quite a bit. So I want to reintroduce that concept. It's actually a concept, is one of the phrases that I repeat quite a bit. And we even made a t-shirt collection where this is written on, but you can only get this t-shirt if you are coming to a workshop. So if you're present in one of our real life trainings like workshops or the group training. But why is showing up not enough? Was it not the thing that to be there, that's everything already? Dabei sein ist alles? But actually what happened in our society, people want to be everywhere at the same time. Participate here and there and see this and that and have a listen here and so on and so forth. But what I'm interested in is the depth of things. And there, it's not enough to just show up. You have to open yourself to go deeply into it. So if we talk about practicing in the sense of training something, to get better, because you need to understand when I talk about practicing, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to get better at something. So it can be that in a sense, your performance in what you're doing stays the same, but your connection with it. This is what for me is the base of the word practicing. Practicing means connecting with something, but there is also the incidents of practicing where you train something. So where you are trying to get better at it, or at least better in a sense of that is more natural for you. And if we look at this, we quickly realize that time spent is actually only one thing. There's all sorts of stories of people that relatively quickly achieve a okay level in whatever endeavor that usually takes 10 times the time. So are these people some sort of hackers or magicians, or are they very good at learning? And I would claim no. what they're doing is, on the one hand, a sprint. And that means they invest a lot of time and a lot of energy in the beginning. But on the other hand, and that's very important, is they are using proper technique of training and learning. And the third thing is the excitement. So the more you involve yourself with your whole being into something, the better the learning will go, I would claim. Like someone wrote to me about the learning Swedish video that I made, that the quickest way to learn a language, and I fully agree, is if you're dropped in another country, no one speaks any language that you speak, and you are, in a sense, completely alone in this country because suddenly you cannot communicate with anyone. So if you have any interest in communication with other people, you will learn super fast how to speak that language. So here we have a sprint happening because you're fully immersed in it. I mean, you can also be in a country and not learn the language at all. And that's the case if people speak your language, or if you just don't care about other people and you're just, at home hanging around at a computer. But many people that come to Berlin, they actually don't learn German because you can get by with English in Berlin. In a sense, not 100% true, because the moment you are having contact with the government, everything will be in German, but then these people usually have a friend that translates everything for them. By the way, for me, this is a no-go. If you're in a foreign country and you decide to live there and you're there for a longer time, like more than a few months, and you just don't speak the language, I don't understand what's going on. Like, it's not even funny for me. Like, in my opinion, your priorities are completely wrong, and you should reconsider your whole life and think, like, imagine me standing in front of you and being super judgmental like I'm talking now. No, but really, like, I don't understand it. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but when people come to my group training and I ask them, and they say they only speak English, and I ask them, how long are you in Berlin already? And they say, okay, I'm here for 2 weeks. And I say, okay, yes, I will translate everything for you, or I'll let someone translate. But if they say, I'm here since 6 months, then I say, okay, you know what? I don't speak any English. Like, now it's up to you to learn German. I apologize for drifting away from the actual topic. The immersed language learner that is in a foreign country, as I said, will learn quickly because that person is excited, in a sense that the person really wants to learn it, and it has the environment where it's easy to learn because everyone speaks the language and everywhere the language is written and so on and so forth. But still, there can be huge differences in how well people learn based on their technique. And the main thing is to have digestible chunks that continuously move you forward. To have digestible chunks that continuously move you forward in the process. Digestible simply means it cannot be too hard. The hardest scenario in language learning is actually what I stated, is if you are in a place where no one speaks any language that you speak, so you have no translation, that's super difficult. And the most difficult variation is if people speak a language that has no connection to your language. Something that is not happening if you are in Europe, because all the languages in Europe have words that happen also in other languages. And there are, of course, here languages that are vastly different from each other. And of course, we have to mention Finnish and Hungarian. So there is probably the least amount of similar words. So these are the outliers in Europe. But German and French have actually lots of common words that are from Latin descent. And of course, German and Swedish have a lot of common words. Of course, French and Spanish have a lot of common words. Italian and Romanian are very similar. Blah, 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 blah. But if someone drops you into the Amazonian rainforest at a tribe that has no interest in speaking Portuguese, if it's in Brazil, suddenly you will be left with nothing. Complete different grammar, complete different words, and probably even a complete different way to see the world. So because of this, also a different way of speaking. And there's a book on this that I highly recommend. It's called Don't Sleep, There Are Serpents by Daniel Everett. In German it's called Das glücklichste Volk. Again, a great translation of the title, because the German title is The Happiest People. Not really an accurate translation of Don't Sleep, There Are Serpents. Fortunately, for most of us, when we want to learn a new language, difficult word for German, language, we actually have similarities, because if we talk about Europeans, and I apologize for the people that are from other parts of the world, but you will have probably something similar. If you are maybe in Asia, you will maybe learn English also because this is international language, but maybe you learn another language in your country or from a country next to it, and there are probably similarities. Would be interesting if someone is listening from language areas that are non-European languages. So that's mainly Asia, actually, because in all the other countries, European languages have at least a place. But for me, it would be interesting to know how many connections are there from Thai to Myanmar. I'm not sure how the language is called that is spoken there, and so on. So if you drop from Germany into France, where it's actually pretty likely that you are in a place where people don't speak your language, any language that you know at all, like maybe you speak German and English, and if you are in a village in France with predominantly older people will not speak a word of English. People will obviously not speak a word of German. It's not really a commonality for French to learn German. There are some people that learn German, but it's not like in Germany it's very common to learn French. I don't think in France it's very common to learn German, but it is quite likely that if you drop there into the countryside, quite far away from Paris, that no one will speak any language that you speak, but you still have all sorts of resources. Like you have dictionaries, online, offline. You have also the similarities of the languages, and this can help you a lot. So what you're doing is looking for the most bang for your buck things, and that means you will not learn any super complex words in the beginning that you will not use anyway, but it always makes a lot of sense to learn the words and phrases that are used a lot. So here's again this 80-20 principle. If you have 20% of the words, you will understand 80% of the stuff. So the Pareto Principle. Yeah, because commonly, if we are speaking, we are using the same words again and again and again, and sprinkle in some special words here and there. Yeah, but just in my last few sentences, there was no special word present, which might mean that my English is super basic, and that is maybe just the case, or it means that in just normal sentences, there are not so many special words happening. So you focus in your learning on what gives you the most for your learning time. And then you make sure you are aware of where you fall flat. So where do you have problems? Is there certain common words that you always forget or that you don't know at all, that are difficult for you to remember? And then you search for a way to improve them. So you look always for the weak links in the chain. And in my video about language learning, which I recommend to watch because there's a connection to this podcast episode if you haven't watched it yet. So I remind you that I speak about two things there. I speak about drilling, so just repeating phrases and words, and there's definitely an importance in that. But the other thing is to have proper images in your head to help you remember something, because it's difficult for us actually to remember sounds. It's more easy for us to connect it with an image. And I go into detail about this in the video. So you look, where do I fall short? What is the next important thing for me to learn? And then you need to find a way to learn it in a digestible way, obviously. And if you start a language, there is lots and lots of words and phrases to learn, and there's grammar to learn, and so on. So you start somewhere, and you make also sure that this somewhere is solid, instead of just learning, very scattered, like very all over the place. Okay, you make sure you have, this first 100 words, they're ready. And then you can put things on top of that. And this is true, I would say, for many, many other things. So the lesson here is to build your basics that they are just there present without you needing to think about them. Yeah, they come out automatically. And that's the same when you move. It's the same when you play an instrument. You want to have these basic things ready. And the phenomena is clear that many advanced practitioners actually have more appreciation for the basics than the beginner. The beginner often wants to go past the basics very quickly, whereas the advanced person can often see so much more in the basics. Not necessarily in every endeavor, the basics would be something that the advanced practitioner is still practicing, but the advanced practitioner understands how important it was for him or her to practice the basics, because everything else is based on top of that. So if we go back to language, then it is this 20% of words that are most used. This I have to have nailed, because then everything that is on top of that will be much easier to remember, because I can always create context. I always have my basics ready and don't have to think about that. So learning a new word here and there and letting this over the years become several thousands new words, that should be much less of a problem if you have the basics ready. Also, because if you have the basics of the language, then it really allows you to speak, to read, to write, and just for the special words that come here and there, you have to ask or look into a dictionary or something like that. But you can stay in a flow using the language. What I notice about endeavors like training the handstand is when something is so in a sense boring, because handstand practice is nothing exciting in a sense of how many things are there to do. There's just a few exercises. It's pretty repetitive. You don't need to invent super special stuff. Like, it's not that there are just 2 exercises or something like this, but there are not 100 exercises. Yeah. And often in a training, you will do maybe 5 or 6 exercises and another 10 exercises in a warm-up. And later or actually also in the beginning, you might even just do 2 or 3 exercises in your actual training, and that's it. And you are just repeating them. But the important thing is that you're trying to do these exercises very well and better, and you take them very serious. Oh, my son just stormed into the room. All right, okay, let's continue. The people that stay with this, the people that stay with practicing the basics diligently for enough time, and not just do it, like, okay, I have to do it, so I do it, but do it and understanding the seriousness about this and really trying to nail them, they have the success in that. So they will stay in the handstand. But most people that then stop and say, oh, I want to practice more playful with it, yeah, they will fall off the process, and they will actually get better much slower, or maybe even stop improving at all. And these facts are the reason why some people do something for 10 years and are still at a very basic level, and other people are at a complete different stage, whatever, after 10 years. And one important thing is that they took their practice so serious. They took the basics serious, that's one thing, but also they always looked for the weak links. Where do I have a problem? How can I solve this problem? How can I make a digestible chunk out of this problem to improve it? And in that sense, showing up is not enough, because if you just practice anyhow, if you're not present and going on also into the difficulty, because that's what's training is defining also, in a sense, that you are going to, and we have heard this a bit too much, this phrase, but you are going to the edge of your comfort zone. But the thing is to go to the edge, because if you go way beyond that, you need to really find strategies to survive there. Again, if you get dropped in the Amazonian rainforest and want to learn the language, in the beginning it might actually take much longer. Yeah, although you're fully immersed, because you have nothing to hold on to. You don't know where to start. So you have to, or actually you know where to start. There is a method about this, of course, also. It's just much more difficult, especially when it comes to more abstract concepts, because already when you point to yourself and say your name, and then you point to the other person and you want that person to say their name, it's unsure what is going to happen. Will they say their name, or will they think you just said the word for human, yeah, or for man or woman, or they don't know and you don't know. Yeah, you're really in the dark in the beginning and you slowly crawl out of it. It's much of a more complicated and difficult process than learning English as someone that is speaking French and having a dictionary to actually verify that this is the translation of that word, the equivalent of that word in that language. So in the Amazonian rainforest, you will be out of your comfort zone and you have to do your best to create digestible chunks there. In that sense, there even more it's true that showing up is not enough. It's not enough just to hang around in the village. You have to really find the strategies. How do you learn the language? And how can you be sure that this word means what you think it means? And if you want to dive into the topic about how to practice properly, I really recommend the book Peak by Anders Ericsson, who unfortunately is not alive anymore, but has left for us in this world a vast body of research into the topic of training and how to reach peak performance. And it's important for me to remind you, the Lebenspraxis is not about reaching peak performance, it's about connecting with the things. But very often training is a part of this, because to reach deeper understanding, it is often making sense to, in that sense, get better at something. Yeah. And maybe you have heard about the 10,000 hour rule. I think especially in America, people have heard about this. There's a book from, I think Malcolm Gladwell is the author, where he talks about the 10,000 hour rule. And that's taken from research from Anders Ericsson, but actually taken wrongly or misunderstood, because what Anders Ericsson says is there are some endeavors where peak performance have used 10,000 hours, have done 10,000 hours of training, but in other disciplines, it might be just 1,000 hours or it might be 100,000 hours, because what is peak performance in a discipline always is in relation to the other practitioners. No, so we look at what are the best practitioners, whatever that means, in that practice, and these are the peak performers. If you have something that is relatively new, like let me invent a discipline, how would be upside down tea drinking, so there's no competition in that discipline yet, and to reach peak performance would be relatively easy. But once other people are coming to the playing field and also trying to reach peak performance, then there will, in a sense, a competition start. So with 10,000 hours, you might not end up in one of the best orchestras in the world, for example, because many people are practicing the violin. And the thing is, again, it's not about the hours. Showing up is not enough. And this is also what Anders Ericsson very clearly claims. It is about what he calls deliberate practice. But he talks about, in a sense, a certain point of view about training, which is to reach peak performance. And as I said, that's not really what I promote, but what I want to talk about is this incidence of training. But actually, I would even claim that showing up is not enough. This phrase is maybe true for practicing in general. So if we say practicing is connection, then there's also something about a certain state. Because people can be at places where things can happen with them, where they can be touched by the place. Yeah, speaking in a picturesque way. But it's not happening because their attitude or their inner state is not open for it. Yeah, so in that sense, it's not enough necessarily to be at a place where things can happen, but you have to be open that things can happen there. In a sense, it all starts with being present, with being here in the present moment. That's the first step into really letting something happen. So people like the practical stuff, no? Like do this and this and this strategy. But actually before that, I would ask something else from you. It's to reflect on how you are engaged in things. How are you practicing? So look at the things that you are doing and just ask yourself, am I present when I'm doing that practice? How am I approaching it? Am I looking at what I struggle with? And am I going into that? Or am I staying in the playing mode where, in that sense, I just do what I like to do, you know what I mean? And you stay actually very much in your comfort zone. That's the first thing, to reflect. And then maybe the strategies appear by themselves, the ideas appear by themselves, just already through being present and being true about what you're doing, like seeing what you're doing and asking yourself, am I doing it? Am I practicing? Or am I just here, but not really here, but actually somewhere else? So remember, showing up is not enough. Good. Before you leave, I remind you that you can help this work to spread and to continue through sending this podcast to someone that you like. So if there's something important for you, then tell other people it's important for you. All right, let me know if you have any thoughts and questions, if you have any requests for other episodes on certain topics. And of course, as always, continue.